Cantun. I'm a student at Western Illinois University, and I'm taking a speech class, and today I'm doing an informative speech on how to interact with persons with disabilities. So when you think of a disability, you might think of physical disability usually. You might think of someone who uses a wheelchair or uses some sort of assistive device. But in actuality, you also might think of someone who's blind or someone who's deaf. But a lot of disabilities are not visible, such as epilepsy, Alzheimer's, cognitive disabilities, mental disabilities, heart problems, or breathing problems. Those are all things that we're not able to see, but are included in disabilities. So according to the U.S. Census Bureau, 1 in every 5 persons has a disability in the U.S. So if there's a room of 10 people, 2 of those people are someone who might have a disability that we can see or that we cannot see. Because diversity is an important topic in today's society, it's good to know how to address, interact with, and become more aware of the needs of people with disabilities in our community. First, I'd like to share how to address people with disabilities using People First language. Second, I'd like to explain how to use simple interactions with various different disabilities. And third, I would like to help you become more aware of the needs of people with disabilities in our community. Most people, when they're referring to people with disabilities, put the disability before the person. And this kind of makes it seem like the disability is what the person is and not what the person has. So in an article called People First Language by Snow, it respectfully puts the person before the disability. It encourages us to use words such as a person with Down syndrome, a person who is deaf, or a person who uses a wheelchair, and not words such as he's Downs, or he's a deafie, or he's wheelchair bound. It also encourages us to stay away from words that want to use pity or afflicted or abnormal, and it does encourage us to use people with disabilities and people without disabilities. The article also talks about using the word people with disabilities versus using the word handicapped. Handicapped actually came from World War I and World War II, when veterans were coming home with missing limbs and they were begging for money in the street with a cap in their hand, hence the word handicapped. And so when you think of that, you kind of think of being afflicted or feeling sorry for someone. You look at what they're not able to do versus what they're able to do. So we try to stay away from the word handicapped and use people with disabilities. And we also try to use the word accessible when referring to parking spaces or restroom spaces that are accessible or entrances. So we would use accessible parking, accessible entrances, and accessible restrooms. Now I'd like to talk to you about how to address people with disabilities that have various different disabilities. And I'll give you some tips on how to interact with people very simply. Many times we want to assume that a physical disability means that there's a cognitive disability as well. But that's not true. So I want to show you a couple simple interactions on how to work with different disabilities. When you're working with a person who uses a wheelchair, you don't want to assume that there's something wrong mentally or cognitively as well. So you want to address a person normally. You want to be able to find out if there is something going on, and if there's not, then you want to interact with that person just as they are. You're also going to want to speak to that person at their eye level. You might want to pop a squat, and speak to someone like this so that they're not looking up at you for 5 minutes while you're sitting there talking about yourself, because that might become a little uncomfortable. And we don't want to assume when you see someone who has a physical disability that they always need help or that they always want help. For example, I went into a post office and there was a person using a walker, and I said, "Can I get the door for you?" And he said, "You can get this door, but let me get the next door." So we don't always want to assume that they need help, and if they do need help, we want to make sure that we wait and ask how they might need assistance. The next category is when you're working with someone who's blind. You want to be specific when you're giving them directions. Could you share with me quickly how you would tell a person who is blind how to get to the restroom from here?
I would say from here, say walk a foot to the left, stand up, walk a foot to the left, walk about 20 feet, then reach out, find the ball, corner, go around.
Great job. So you are referring to people in terms of feet. The article that has disability etiquette article that I read also talked about referring to directions, very specifically using feet, using yards, if you're outside, using half a block or a block. And if you're inside and you're describing what's on a plate or right in front of them, you can also use the clock system, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, or 6 o'clock. So that's very good. Another quick interaction when helping someone who is blind is that you want to offer your elbow. Don't take theirs if you're going to guide them to a new surrounding, because you want to make sure that that's exactly what you're doing. You're guiding them. You're not dragging them along. So that's just one other thing, a simple interaction when working with someone who's blind. When working with someone who's deaf, I'm going to save you a lot of time if you put up your 2 fingers and you swirl them around your mouth. That means, do you read lips? If they say no, they do not read lips, then writing things down or texting back and forth is the best interaction that you can have with them. And if they do read lips, there's no need to shout. They're not going to be able to hear you anyway. And shouting also distorts your lips. So you want to speak in a normal, average voice. And another interaction is if they have an interpreter, if they're using an interpreter, you still want to maintain interaction with that person and not the interpreter. The interpreter's job is to communicate what you're saying to the person, not to communicate to the interpreter directly. Okay? These are just a few encouraging tips on how to engage with people with disabilities. Overall, it's also our lack of awareness that causes a big barrier in our community. As mentioned, there's a lot of invisible disabilities, and in those cases, we just do what we can to ask the person how they could best be assisted. We don't want to assume that there's nothing wrong if they have a parking tag that is an accessible parking sticker and you see them walking into the store normally. Maybe there's something wrong with their breathing, or maybe there's something wrong with their heart. So we don't want to assume anything. We also want to become more aware of our community access, such as accessible entrances, restrooms that might not be accessible, and so we can all become advocates in knowing how to advocate for the needs of people with disabilities. I hope this information has provided you with the basics of engaging with people with disabilities. Altogether, I've shared how to address people using people first language. I've also talked about how to use simple interactions in various disabilities. And I've shared how to be more aware of the needs of people with disabilities in our community. Overall, engaging with people with disabilities is just like engaging with a person without a disability. It takes awareness, open mind, and open-mindedness to break down the barriers that are in our community. We want to focus on what the abilities are and not what the disabilities are. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. The end.